Hi, everybody. Welcome to GW Center for Integrative Medicine YouTube channel. I'm co-host Dr. Kogan, Medical Director, Associate Professor of Medicine here at GW. I have a very special session for you today. So we're going to talk about lectins. Is it a problem? Is it a not problem? Is it an anti-nutrient? Is it BS at all? And you should pay no attention to it. We have some experts today. So let's start with our nutritionist, Ajowa, who's been with us not that long, but taken the center by the storm. So she recently concluded Master Science in Nutrition and Integrative Health from Maryland University of Integrative Health. She's also takes a very critical role in our RECODE, the memory program, as a program coordinator. And we also have Ashley and Ajowa today, who's our director of our long COVID program. Ashley's been a physician assistant for a very long time. She's studied acupuncture. Actually, surprisingly, I didn't realize that also until I looked up your bio, that you also graduated from Maryland University of Integrative Health. So feels like the theme for today. And she's also works at the GW Resiliency and Wellbeing Center and very interested in nutrition. So, you guys, the experts, I'm gonna say my take on the topic for a couple of seconds because this question comes up all the time. Is lectins a problem? Is it not? What is this all about, right? So, and I will be asking you specifically what they are. So I'm gonna hold off of telling whole detail of what they are. But my take has always been, the nutrients can always have two opposites, right? They can have some benefits from certain things, but you take too much in the wrong form, and they actually could cause problems. So we do think that some lectins or excessive lectins in one's diet could theoretically cause some digestive problems, can block absorption of some nutrients. And Harvard, they have this nutritional source webpage, and they're kind of listing some of the problems that could come up. I mean, they're listing that you can malabsorb minerals like calcium, iron, phosphorus, and zinc. You can have general things like bloating, even vomiting and severe diarrhea and severe upset stomach. But generally, this whole topic seems like created a very, very kind of this two sides. There's some people in this anti-lectin camp, and they're like, this is the worst ever. This is why we're dying prematurely, and all kinds of claims. And then there are a whole bunch of people, by the way, including Andrew Weil, who says, don't worry about lectin, eat your food, and it's fine. So what do you think? I don't have any particular sequence here, so you guys just start however you want to start. So let's start with just basic questions. What are the lectins, and could they have a problem associated with them?
I'll start. Lectins are proteins that are in some foods like plants, um, animals, dairy, and they bind to carbohydrates. And they can also cause some problems because they bind to cells in our bodies. And in some people, that means that they bind to the our gut layer. And so they are often found in some of our favorite foods: seeds, rice, beans, all those things that we really love. A lot of the vegetables.
All the foods we're told to eat more of.
Yes, right, exactly. So a lot of it could be how we cook them or if we cook them at all, but they can cause problems for some people, and probably Ashley sees a lot more of that.
Yeah, so this is the great lectin debate, right? And I'm split on this lectin conversation, but what I will say when it comes to acute COVID, lectins are pretty favored actually in the research. There's a lot of research looking at lectins as what they call the sparkle of hope, even in some article, titles, right? So even to that extent, and the reason because of this is just like what Ajowa said, that they can bind to cells, but you know what else they bind to and interfere with? COVID. So they interfere with the viral entry and the shedding of coronavirus. So when you're looking at lectins, right, it would make sense to have more lectins if you are acutely infected with COVID. Now, from a conversation of something like long COVID, right, or if you have an autoimmune condition, then lectins may not be a great option for you because it's clear that they cause this inflammatory response. And that inflammatory response, when you're already in one, may not be beneficial, right? If you have a sort of an autoimmune condition, but may be really helpful with something like an acute illness. So I think that it's twofold, right? Lectins are great if you have an acute illness, and maybe not as great if you're somebody who's in sort of an autoimmune state.
Yeah, and the anti-nutrient part of it is that
Mhm.
lectins can, cause us to not be able to. They bind to minerals, and so we can end up with some mineral deficiencies if we eat too many lectins. So that's another aspect.
Well, so let me ask you about this. There's a very big mixed messages, right? So the more standard academic source, like the one I just quoted from Harvard, basically says lectins are rarely a problem in large amounts because when we cook they're mostly present in very high amounts in the foods that we don't eat raw. And then when you cook, particularly when you boil things for a while, lectins kind of dissociate and they fall apart and you throw them out with the boiled water of the food you don't eat, or they simply become inactivated. And then there are some sources says that any amount of lectin could be hugely problematic for sensitive people. I presume that the truth is somewhere in between as usual. There's no black and white, that it's all shades of gray. I guess the key question is, so let's presume for a second that patient of ours is worried about this topic. Let's say so they read it and they're like, oh, I'm going to try to cut out some lecithin rich foods. What do you think? Should they try this? If they are going to try it, how much should they try? Like, should they just go all in for a little bit, for just like we do with some diets, right? Some diets we would, like a low FODMAP diet, we will do just for 8 to 10 weeks. We're not going to do that forever and ever. So anything can be done relatively safe, most likely for 8 weeks. So what would be the practical advice here if somebody is really concerned about this issue?
Well, I think if you haven't had a problem, that might be something to take into consideration. If you eat a lot of beans and rice, or you eat raw vegetables and you haven't had a problem, you may not want to get that concerned, though there is some theories that it binds to different parts of the body, distant parts, and maybe they might present later. But if you want to check it out, I guess it makes sense to, if you're really concerned, it might make sense to give it up for a couple of weeks, a month or so, and see if you feel better, or some problems might go away. But a lot of times we read stuff and we get a little paranoid. So if you want to be absolutely sure, though there's no absolutes, you can try it out. But if you're not having problems,
Well, let me continue with the next question then before Ashley contributes. So, but how do you know? Like, a lot of problems are vague, right? Especially like this vague digestive symptoms like bloating, for example. I mean, I definitely have that. And I know if I eat even a little too much beans, I'll pay for it. Like, I know that beans are often horrible for me, no matter how well they cooked. But yet sometimes I'm perfectly fine with them. Like, I can't figure out why this particular beans I would eat, and they seemingly similarly cooked and similarly soaked. Is it a lecithin? Is it not? Do we have any concrete way of proving that the problem, outside of just what Ajowa and I said, just cutting it out and seeing how you feel?
I don't know if there are any concrete
There's
ways.
no test, I think, right? There is no test that we can run to say, okay, you have a lecithin problem.
Not that I know of.
I would say that not all lectins are created equal, right? So the mannose binding lectins are the ones that actually protect you against viruses, right? Things, for instance, like leeks or
Mhm.
stinging nettle. Those are mannose binding lectins that can be really helpful. But garlic is not. And garlic is also considered a lectin. In addition, so is gluten, right? So is dairy, like Audra was saying earlier. And so those are more inflammatory type lectins. So I wouldn't say that all lectins are created equal, right?
What a bummer. I love garlic. I eat it all the time, and then I pay for it very regularly.
Yeah.
With very significant bloating after. All right. So, okay, so that's an important point. So lectins are not all the same. You have some coming from certain sources that are better than others. And are there some lectins that are easier to digest or easier to process than others?
Well, it depends on how you prepare them. If you soak your beans overnight is suggested, and you can either sprout them, sprout seeds. That takes away about half of your lectins. And then if you pressure cook for 10 minutes, some of those beans or grains, that, neutralizes them. Now, I don't know about other stuff, but the way you prepare the food could make a difference.
So when nuts are getting roasted, are the lectins getting destroyed during the roasting process or not really? Like
100
say
degrees.
almonds or
They believe 100 degrees will start to
100 degrees will start. Okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure what temperature, nuts are roasted at. But.
Well, I think part of the problem here is there is no clear quantified data, right? What you have to do to get kind of perfect level of, if you're really concerned, of no lectin, because I'm seeing a lot of conflicting messages. Some places say if you soak it overnight, pressure cooked, as Ajowa said, that it's fine. But then some places say, no. Pressure cooking for 10 minutes is not enough. You have to boil them for a very long time. The longer, the better. So I'm kind of, it's not really clear. The people who are at the craze side, like some of the people who are like wrote the books on this, and we're not going to mention anybody by name, that's fine. But some of them say you should never eat any lectin containing food, no matter how it's prepared, because you still have some left and you have to be 100% lectin free in order to have a good answer whether it's a big contributing factor to your problems or not. So, I think that seems to me really far taken. I guess let me ask you both this. Have you seen any patient who claims definitively that when they completely cut out lectins out of their diet, they got a lot better?
I have seen some that have cut out lectins, in particular ones that we know are big offenders, right? The ones that we just talked about, nightshades, things like tomatoes, right? Those tend to be really offensive for the body. I've seen that they have had, some improvement in sort of their overall.
And those were inflammatory states generally, like autoimmune?
Yeah, generally inflammatory states. So, my general person that I see who maybe has chronic fatigue or they have general aches, they would say, some of them, that they did see some improvement, and then others not so much, right? And I think it does go back to what you were saying earlier about there's so much misinformation and different information. Just the WHO and the FDA alone have completely different requirements on how long you should soak beans for, right? If you follow the WHO, they would tell you 12 hours. If you follow the FDA, they say 5 hours. That's a big difference, right? 12 hours versus 5 hours.
Well, overnight, yeah.
So, Ajowa, what are you telling most of the patients? What do you think is a more sensible approach from nutritionist perspective?
Well, I would definitely soak as long as possible. Throw away the soap water. There, on some websites they tell you keep the soap water because there are nutrients in there. But in this case, we don't want the lectin, so throw it away, wash it off. Some people even boil the beans or vegetables and then throw that water off and cook again with that. So, and sprouting, beans or seeds can make a difference. That could cut out like 50% of lectins. And basically, if you try those methods and you don't have a problem, I would say that, not to worry about it unless there are some really serious problems that present. But, making sure that you don't, take your multivitamins with lectins and being aware that beans can And eating beans and taking your iron and zinc could be a problem too, because they get absorbed.
So you're saying separate lectin content, if you eat them, separate them from taking multivitamins and other minerals, because you may have a problem absorbing since you okay. All right, that's an important message. Okay. So well, there's another topic that I want to bring up. I mean, we had on this channel, a couple of years ago, we had Sally Norton, who's a kind of known expert on oxalates. And the funny part is that most of the lectin containing foods are very closely correlate with high oxalate content. So, I'm throwing another wrench here and saying, I don't know. I mean, sometimes people may think that they're improving from low lectins. Maybe they're improving because oxalates are low, or maybe they're improving because they were allergic to those foods that it's an imprecise science, unfortunately. I do like both of you thinking clinically, though. Like, you try that out, and if you feel a bit better, okay, well, then maybe that's working. And, especially when there's an inflammatory state. I think, Ashley, you pointed that really importantly, that those generally big concerns when people have chronic inflammation, we want to curbside that. Any sort of link from lectin to long COVID? Have we seen anything? What studies? Anything you want to tell us?
Yeah, so there was a study in 2023 in Frontiers, right, about looking at MBL levels, right, mannose binding lectin levels. And actually, we were just talking about how there's really not any biomarker, we don't know, but there is a test that you can do. You can do an MBL test. You can easily do it through LabCorp to see what your mannose binding lectin level is. And what they saw was that when people had acute COVID and they generally had a lower level of MBL, which is usually associated with a genetic variant. So usually this is a genetic thing that you're just born with, right? They saw that these individuals were more likely to have long COVID brain fog and actually smell and taste issues specifically. So not just long COVID, but specifically brain fog, and a correlation between low mannose binding lectins and brain fog / having issues with smell and taste.
So what happens when the patients have long COVID? Is that MBL level goes up? It becomes too high? Or is
I don't know. I don't think we have that. I don't have that information. Before I started researching heavily lectins, I don't think that I was ordering a lot of MBL, labs.
So but you started ordering them now?
Yeah, so I've slowly started ordering them in people that are, I think may potentially could have an issue. The problem is that we don't have enough information, right? This is one study. We don't have enough information to say we should be ordering all these levels on each and every patient. You definitely can't order the genetic testing on each individual patient. That's, a more costly matter, and usually does require some sort of geneticist because it's part of a large cancer panel. So there's other implications to ordering a genetic test like that. The patient would need to be aware of. But when it comes to just ordering a general mannose binding lectins, the jury's still out. We're going to have to see, are people with long COVID having higher levels? Are they having lower levels still? Where is, the information that's there, right?
And have you seen patients with long COVID claim that they cut out lectins and they felt better?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, in many long COVID programs, it's a standard protocol. And like you said, there's a lot of carryover too, right? Of what we know. There's all these diets out there, the anti-inflammatory diet, the oxalate diet, the lectin diet, the histamine diet, which is also a huge thing in the long COVID community, right? And there's so much overlap between the two. And so I think that sometimes as a patient, they feel, and maybe Ajowa can speak to this, but they feel really overwhelmed. Like, what do I eat? What's left for me? I've gotten that question many times. If I can't eat histamine foods, I can't eat lectins, what can I eat?
Right. Yeah, that is an issue. And it makes me wonder too, how much our overall health and our nutrient insufficiencies that clients may have. I mean, one of the things when you were talking about long COVID, lectins can cause a zinc deficiency, and long COVID, or COVID can, if you don't have enough zinc, you do lose your sense of taste and smell. So it's just all of our bodies are unique, genetically, culturally, and, different ways. So I wonder what role our overall health might play in that. And, we often get hung up in not being able to eat a lot of things, but we have to, have some common sense and kind of look at other factors that might be, relevant here. And yeah, because you do have to eat. So, and I often wonder about balance too. If there's other things that we can balance these problems with, if our bodies are in better shape, then they might be better able to fight off some of the negative side effects of certain foods.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at all the blue zones in the world, right? Many of those zones, people are eating a lot of lectins. One,
Very high lectin diets. I would say not in every blue zone, but probably at least in half of them. I mean, half of all the foods contain high amounts of lectin. So, and then of course, some of the people we deeply trust, like Andrew Weil, for example, says it's total nonsense. The lectins have nothing to do with anything, and it's just a fad. It only makes it tougher for an average person. But I think you both pointed out something really important. It's not a problem to try to sort of cut out certain things for periods of time, see if you feel better with that. I think way of preparing foods, I think, is important, right? So if you like to eat a lot of nuts and seeds and beans, definitely soak them routinely. I think that seems to be pretty universally accepted statement. And then also, I guess if you have a chronic inflammatory condition of any kind, whether it's a long COVID or autoimmune state, talk to your provider. But it sounds like trying lowering lectins or maybe even cutting them out for a period of time should suffice. Now, I will ask we don't have a lot of time, but I have a couple more questions. So one is, if somebody cuts out the lectin out of the diet, do you have any sense how long it will take before they will start feeling the effect? Is it like days, weeks, months? What are we seeing typically?
I don't know.
I would say it could take a while, right? And then the problem is too, they're not only doing that likely, right? With many of these conditions, they're doing a lot of things all at once. They're taking supplements that are going to be repleting some of their nutrients they've lost, like zinc, like Ajowa talked about. They're going to be maybe seeing some sort of rehabilitation specialist. Maybe they started a new medication. So many of these patients who have really complex medical conditions have a difficult time determining, is this helping? Is it not helping? Is it a piece of the puzzle? And I don't think anybody has an answer for them for that, right? And that's even harder than how long it will take, is really what is making the difference.
All right. And I guess the next thing is, Ashley, when you get enough data on MBL, I think let's have a lectin 2 session so that you can give us a little update. I personally have not heard of this. I haven't done this test in clinical setting, so I'm not sure. Sounds like it's something relatively new. It'll be really interesting to see if long COVID community will benefit from running this test. So as usual, you can find us at GWCIM.com. If you have questions to either Ashley, Ajowa, or myself, reach us out. Have a safe day. Eat your lectins after you soak them and boil the beans and nuts. And if you're vegetarian and doing really well and feeling well, don't worry about it. That's the Ajowa's main point today, and I completely agree with that. But if you have an autoimmune condition and you want to try it out to cut out lectins, it's quite a reasonable option to probably do it for a few months, maybe not much longer than that, and then slowly reintroduce and see how you feel. And with that, everybody have a wonderful day. We'll see you back here covering all kinds of topics about integrative medicine, health, and wellness. Bye.